One day were Starlight Glimmer and Twilight Sparkle invited to the Canterlot Castle by Celestia and Luna for some tea. It has been a while since Celestia has seen Twilight, since she was one of the main rulers of the kingdom, and it is always a time consuming, and which something Twilight can understand. When she got her invitation from Celestia, she and Starlight actually accepted the invitation almost immediately. When they arrived, when they sat down, Luna said they were expecting another guest. Both Twilight and Starlight looked at each other with a confused look and asked, "Who else are you waiting for?" Then Luna said, "Oh, and it's a very old friend of ours." "Oh, who?" You will see when she gets here." She? Twilight was really confused because when they both mention of an old friend that both Celestia and Luna knows, and it's a she, there is nothing that Twilight know. Ever since she went back the time when she was still a unicorn and still living in Canterlot Castle, she had no acknowledge of any memories of Celestia or Luna ever spending time with any other than herself or the staff or maybe other delegations, but never any particular special friend or a personal friend. But as he was sitting there waiting, there was a knock on the door, and a guard says, "Your Highness, your friend has arrived. Please, let her in." But as the Celestians were smiling, Twilight and Starlight just looking at each other, wondering who they could have been. But as they both saw this mayor walking in, they thought it was a unicorn. So they were probably thought maybe there's an old student from Celestia's School of Gifted Unicorns. But as she removed her cloak, they both were stunned. It wasn't a unicorn, but in fact, it was an alicorn. Both Celestia and Luna saw that they were just stumped. Oh, we forgot to mention that our friend is an alicorn, like us. Both Twilight and Starlight were dumbfounded still. They had no idea. It was like the whole world had collapsed of the knowledge of any other alicorns. But then Starlight asked, "So, she is alicorn? Was she born as one? Or like Twilight?" Luna said that she was actually like Twilight herself, but she was transformed into an alicorn many years ago. In fact, around the time when they were actually around when Celestia and Luna had started ruling. They actually told that this alicorn but is named Shimmering Spectacle. Shimmering Spectacle is actually a spectacle. She's actually an old friend. She's around the same age as Luna. So, as she was walking herself to the table, sitting down, smiling, said, "Yeah, um, yeah, like Luna said, I'm actually an old friend of theirs." But then Twilight said, "Celestia, I had never ever heard of any other alicorns. Why is that? I mean, nothing in the history books or not mentioning any other alicorns from that time when you and Luna became the rulers. Why is that?" Celestia looked at Luna, and Luna nodded, and Celestia then walked down, and sat down by the table and explained, "You see, the reasons why that Shimmering Spackle is not mentioned anywhere in the history books is because she asked us not to be mentioning that there is another alicorn." "Wow," said Twilight, and then Starlight interrupted and said, "So, assuming that she was transformed to an alicorn around the same time you were start ruling, correct?" "That's correct." "So, what made your choice to just transform your old friend to an alicorn? By a random chance, or did you ask for it? Considering that when Twilight was your student, She was actually have been doing a lot of practice, a lot of trials, tests, adventures to prove herself worthy to be as a princess. Same thing as for Cadence. So, but then Luna interrupted and said, "You see, yeah, you're right about that. But another reason is that Shimmering Spectacle was actually very sick at the time, and there was no cure. The doctor said that she may not even survive by the end of the summer that year. And she was a very close friend of ours, and she was the only friend that we had from our childhood. And we couldn't just see her just dying like that. So we had asked our old mentor, Star Squirrel, if there was any way for helping her, if there's any treatments or anything that could maybe that's something that she could take, even though she may have to live with the disease, this illness, but she had made to take some sort of treatment for it. If there was any medical plant out there in the kingdom, or anything, magical artifact, something that could help her. But he said there was nowhere that there was no cure. But the only that could save her if she was transformed in Alicorn. But he said that was probably not the best because ponies had already accepted just use the two Alicorn princesses. If there was a third, it would be a very good, very big change. Ponies probably would to wondering if there's gonna be some sort of power struggle between the ruling sisters with the summoning third Alicorn. But they did it even though against their mentor's wish. Even when they offered this idea at first to Shimmering Spectacle, Celeste said she was really very hesitating. Yeah, that I was. At the time, I only had very much accepted my fate. But when they offered me the chance to be, could have been survive, but when they said it was the only small side effect that I would be an alicorn like them, the downside that I had to be, may have accepted, I may have been accepted as royal. But I said I would accept the offer, but I would not be this. I would not want to be addressed as any royalty or anything in particular special. So after that, they transformed me into an alicorn, but they agreed to accept my terms. And after that was transformed, I was back to health. But it took me time to get used to flying, but they kept me in the castle for most part. But one day, after maybe a few weeks or maybe a month, I told them I cannot stay here in the castle any longer, so I decided to leave. Where did you go? Both asked Twilight. I went off. I didn't have any particular the destination in mind, but I wanted to see the world, especially the new kingdom that has newly founded. Sure, it was still a lot of land that hasn't even been occupied ponies yet. I mean, it's still the land was still the kingdom was very still small. Ponies had still got used to a whole new land and starting to spread out to places that would eventually become Manhattan, Trondheim, and even Philadelphia of all places. So where did you spend most of the time though? I mean, there had been like what 1,000 years. Well, they went to different places around the time. I only stayed on a few places at a time, not for long, maybe a couple of weeks or so. But I always wore my cloak in order to hide my new status in Alicorn. Makes sense, said Starlight. I mean, if I was an Alicorn at the time, I would also have done the same thing. Unless if there was any magical spell that somehow concealed my wings even magically. Yeah, I mean, it were probably no spell at the time, said Celestia, but yeah, but we did miss our friend. So, when did you get back to Questia? I mean, a couple of months ago. So, where had you been all this time? Oh, a little bit here and there, traveling around Griffithstone, South Arabia, Even sometimes in the Crystal Empire before it vanished. Otherwise, I would have been here. Yeah, um, but look, let's not more talk about that, said Shimmering Speckle. I'm here, and I want to get to know my friends better since it has been a while. Yeah, so during the time, they were actually just enjoying the time of tea, and even though Twilight and Starlight did ask some questions about Shimmering about her past, or some of her travels, what she learned over the years, and she didn't mind to answer those questions though. But even after the first visit, Twilight and Starlight, when they were back home, they were actually starting to question themselves. Have any pony ever noticed that she was actually an alicorn? Starlight then had asked herself, what if she was ever going to reveal herself as an alicorn? What if that she actually had, but even an accident? There should have been spread on the news about it herself, she said. Yeah, unless that she used some sort of spell, maybe ponies forgot about it. Well, wouldn't that be against the pony's right to remember? Said Starlight again. Yeah, but maybe it was true, but it was different times. Yeah, you're right. But as Starlight and Twilight made a promise to each other not to mention this to anyone, not to their friends, not even Spike, that Shimmering Speckle was an alicorn. But both agreed it could eventually come out by even if an accident or if she made official announcement to reveal herself as an alicorn. But after a couple of weeks after the first meeting with Shimmering Speckle, Starlight was actually heard a knock on the door. It was early in the morning. She opened the door and who else stood by the door but Shimmering Speckle? Oh, I, I didn't expect you to be here. Did Twilight expect you by any way? No. Actually came back here. Well, came here to see you, Twilight, and to see other friends. Starlight noticed that she's still wearing a cloak, so it makes sense. Otherwise, would have been a lot of ponies outside the castle to talk to her. Well, Twilight is in the kitchen just preparing some breakfast. If you want something, yeah, I can take something. So they went in the kitchen. Twilight was a surprise, but she was happy to see her new friend. Spike knew at least about Shimmering Speckle to be a friend of Twilight and Starlight and the other sisters. But when she removed the cloak, he was stunned and surprised. Twilight! You didn't tell me that was another alicorn? Well, Spike, I didn't know this until a few weeks ago. Whoa. You knew this for weeks, but didn't tell anybody? Not even me, your number one assistant? Spike, the only reason why we didn't tell you is because of this reaction, said Starlight. And also, we made a promise to each other. Imagine. How would you think the public will react if they find out there's a whole new unknown alicorn out there? And if this came out and she did the reveal, how do you think the public will react? Spike was silent for a moment, and he realized that Starlight had a point, because they were more likely to have react as he did. Oh, my apologies. I don't know what your name is. Oh, my name is Shimmering Speckle, an old friend of Luna and Celestia. Ah, that makes sense, says Spike and smile. Well, welcome to Ponyville. My name is Spike the Dragon, Twilight Sparkle's number one assistant, and he bowed. You don't have to bow for me, Spike. I understand that you're her friend. Well, he's not like my friend, says Twilight. He is like her younger brother. Oh? Well, then Starlight made a brief telling her about Spike, how he came to her in her company. I understand that now. Well, there's not often you see dragons, but you're not afraid to see him? Of course not. I've spent some time in Dragonland with myself. Well, in hiding to study dragons, but, you know. So, Shimmering Sparkle actually revealed that he's going to stay in Ponyville for a couple of days before going back to Canterlot. But during later that day, Starlight actually spent some time with Shimmering Sparkle to talk more about her past and even got to know each other better. But it was something about Shimmering that even Starlight felt comfortable with. She felt that there was some sort of connection. It was something that she couldn't even explain. But that same afternoon, when both decided to go out somewhere to just grab something to eat, they went to this local cafe in the area. But as he was sitting there, by accident, Shimmering's cloak fell off. And some ponies immediately noticed. Ponies was like, there's an alicorn here! But that is not Twilight or the sisters. That is not even Cadence. Who is she? Then her cover was exposed and blown. But luckily though, Starlight knew exactly what to do. Since they both had already paid for the food, they grabbed the food and Twilight and Starlight immediately teleported them back to the castle. But sure enough, as they expected, this spread like a wildfire in the whole community. And when by the end of the day, the whole town knew about this alicorn. Even some actually have walked up to Twilight's castle and not demanded, but they were just asking who this mysterious alicorn were, who her name is, and where she's from, and what her princess title is, and why they never heard of it. She explained as briefly as she could, but as Twilight expressed their concern to Shimmering Spackle, maybe it's time you to make your first official announcement that you are who you are. I mean, if now Ponyville knows, there's only a matter of time before this news will spread wildfire in the Transit Kingdom. Yeah, I know this day will eventually would come in some time. So by the next day, by the city hall, Shimmering Spackle was standing there with Starlight and Twilight to as a moral support, and the police there was actually taking this new announcement very good way. They actually accepted her, and in fact, by the end of that day itself, Shimmering had made a lot of friends in among the ponies in town. But one other thing that she didn't expect happened. By the end of that day, Starlight actually walked up to Shimmering and asked if she maybe would like to go out on a date. Turns out, during this short time, and even after first interaction at the Canterlot, she had actually fallen in love with, or at least gotten had a crush on, Shimmering Spackle, and she actually agreed on this date. Even though they were at first were a little bit hesitating if it's gonna be a long-term relationship or just one-time event or dating, but they both agreed to take it slowly, just to see if this could actually be something serious. But they went to the movies and had a good time. But it didn't take long for them to realize they were actually having such strong bond, such strong feelings for each other. But they didn't make any plans for long-term dating until after a couple of days, just to being for sure. After they'd been dating for maybe as about 2 months, both realized they were in love with each other, and they wanted to be with each other more than anything at all. When they told Twilight about this, she was actually very supportive and said, go for it. And it didn't take long for this to be as public news. Even back when Starlight, and even before the dating, when Starlight's friends, Rarity and both the others, when they found out it was another alicorn, special Rarity, she was very excited. She wanted to meet Shimmering Spackle as almost immediately. She even asked her a lot about herself, but she actually bonded a lot with them also. But over time, things between Starlight and Shimmering Sparkle actually just got big, even got stronger and stronger. But one day, when Starlight was back in the camp at the castle, while Shimmering Speckle was actually back in Canton for visit to her old friends, Starlight was actually out to. But while she were in the castle, but when she went to see Fluttershy. But it was during the winter, and after she had spent a few hours with Fluttershy, it was getting dark, and she was walking home. But as this, but it started blowing. The window started blowing a little bit more and more, and she barely could see anything. And in fact, she couldn't even see even her own hoof in front of her. She was walking in straight direction towards back to Ponyville. But the fact is, she was way off on the course. Instead, instead of walking towards Ponyville, she took a different direction. Because now she was in the middle of the blizzard. Even sure she can use the spell to make a bubble around her to protect herself. But she was in a deep focus of trying to get home as fast as possible. Sure, she could always teleport. But she had been told by Twilight many times teleporting in the middle of a storm or a blizzard could eventually end up being, she could have been, even though she was focused on where she'd go, any slight interruption could have made her end up being way off course as well. So she remembered that forbidden rule, not teleport, no matter what, if you're in the middle of a storm. So she had to force to walk. But as she was walking, she felt that the distance seems to be getting very, very more distant from Ponyville. Because she had walked the same distance, the same directions, even at night, even in summer. And it shouldn't have been this long. But when it was too late, she realized she was way off the destination as she was supposed to be going. In fact, instead of walking straight toward Ponyville, she had ended up in one of the places that they most considered the most dangerous in the whole world. Every Forest. The Every Forest was also dangerous for the most part. Most ponies stay out of it. But now she was in the middle of blizzard. She had no idea where she was even going. She tried to figure out where she was supposed to be going, but then suddenly she heard this sound. An owl howling behind her. She almost immediately recognized it. A timber wolf. But it was so far though, she couldn't even exactly pinpoint where this timber wolf were, or was even after her, or even had no sort of sense of smell. Nothing. But she didn't take this for any question though, because she knew it was impossible to run in this blizzard. But so she tried and tried to work a little bit faster, but the howling seems to be getting closer and closer, but it wasn't even that. But the sound of the howling and among the winds made it even scarier. And as she was walking, she tripped and fell down a small hill, and everything went dark. She lost consciousness. By the next morning, the storm had passed, and Shimmering Speckle had returned back to Ponyville after her visit her friends. And in the morning, she didn't notice that Starlight was even back yet, because she went to her room, thought, oh, she's already up. So she went down to the kitchen, found Spike and Twilight by eating breakfast, and she asked, oh, has Starlight already eaten breakfast? Both Spike and Twilight looked at each other and said, no, she hasn't even been up yet. What? She said, but she is not even in her room. Perhaps she didn't already eating breakfast early, said Spike, and left the castle. Yeah, I mean, that would make sense, said Twilight, but then still, she would have left a message, though, at least a note telling us. Well, there was not anything like a note in her room, not on my door, or her door, or in the kitchen, right? No? Since you were first here, Spike, did you notice? Did you see her, or did you ever hear the door open? No, said Spike. They were started getting a bit worried now. They finished the breakfast quite quickly, and they went straight to the door and just to find if Starlight had been, if her coat and her, even her scarf and her hat was even there, but they were also gone. So they're wondering maybe that she was out. But as they were to open the door, there was one thing that Spike immediately pointed out. There were no hoof prints. If Starlight had left the castle in the morning, even before him waking up, it should have been hoof prints just outside the door and leading away from it. But there was nothing. There was new snow, but no signs of any footprints. Nowhere. So maybe she never came home yesterday from Fluttershy, said Starlight. Said Twilight. Well, I mean, then Spike realized, remember, yeah, she did actually went there in the early afternoon, but it started snowing a little bit heavy last night, and it was like a blizzard. Do you think that she may still be over there? Says Twilight again. Yeah, it is possible, said Shimmering Spectacle. But if she was still there, maybe she hasn't even left it. You know, we should go there to see just in case. Yeah. So they got ready and left the castle and went straight to there. And now they knocked on the door. At first, there was no sound, no silent. It was complete silent. They knocked on the door again and said, and almost like, "Fly, are you up?" Almost like screaming. The After the word of the moment, they heard someone walking down for the stairs, and the door opened, and just a nearly awoken Fluttershy. Twilight, are you doing here so early? Spike, Shimmering Spectacle? Fluttershy, is Starlight here? No, she left my cottage like last night. Well, later in the evening, actually. Why? Then they both looked at each other and said, she never came home. Well, maybe she left castle early. No, said Spike. There were no hoof prints on the outside. Even though her gear, even her hat and scarf was gone, but she never came back home. That statement made Fluttershy a bit scared and cleared away. Are you sure she isn't even here? No. I mean, she left in the night. That's last evening. Do you think something can happen? I hope not, said Shimmering Sparkle, almost crying. Here, don't cry. She's probably just somewhere, maybe without a storm. Yeah, that's possible though, says Spike. I mean, if she knew that was impossible to teleport in that bad storm, well, that bad weather, she must have found somewhere to find shelter. Yeah, but where? Who knows? We should start looking for her almost immediately. Yeah. Okay. I will get dressed, and I will go with Shimmering Spackle looking at the area. Yeah. How about this? But then Spike said, Starlight, Twilight, how about we go to talk to Sakura? She may have seen something, or maybe she can help us to find her. Twilight actually said, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Me and Spike go there to see her. Okay? Yeah." So they said that immediately they both took off to find Sakura's hut in the every forest. Since Sakura is the only pony that's, well, zebra who actually dared to even live in the most dangerous place. When they arrived to the hut, they saw that Sakura was already up and doing some work inside. Ah, Sakura, are you up? Really? Yeah, minding myself. But then explained the reason why I was there. No, I haven't seen anything, not even last night, to this blizzard. Do you think maybe you can help us? She nodded and then actually went on to help them to look around in the area. But but since the storm was so bad last night, if there was any footprints or hoofprints, they were all being erased by the snow. So there's no way for them to find any footprints at all. That was one clue that they realized immediately. Did you notice any particular activity by the Timberwolves or anything in the area last night? Twilight asked. Nope, nothing at all, says Sakura back. So they started looking around an area. How about to go this way? Ah, There's nothing over there. It's just a steep hill and some rocks. Are you sure? I mean, it's worth it to look around. Yeah, okay then. So they went to the area and looked down and saw first nothing, but then Spike, as they were about to walk over, wait, is that Starlight's scarf? He pointed out, and sure enough, amongst the snow, there was something red. Spike, actually, without a doubt, without even hesitating, he rolled down, he slid down on the ground, and as he was walking up to this, he was about to moving it, and as he's lifting it, he noticed something below. Something pink. And he scrapped it off and said, Twilight! I found her! And Twilight and Sakura came down as fast as they could. They saw that Starlight was covered in a, at least several inches of snow. She's cold. She needs to get in the hospital or is in heat immediately, said Twilight. So they immediately carried her back to Sakura's hut, which was the closest. Luckily though, Twilight managed to find enough blankets, and even Sakura made a quick, fast, warming, up-heating drink. But as it was done, Twilight told Spike to find Fluttershy and Shimmering Spectacle as fast as they could and bring them back here. He nodded and did leave. Do you think she will be okay? And Sakura said that she wasn't sure. Because if Starlight had been there the whole night, covering in deep snow, it is hard to say for certain. But she was still breathing, and even though she was deeply cold, but there was nothing more that it can do, just wait. Only a moment later, Starlight, Shimmering Spectacle, Fluttershy, and Spike came back. When Shimmering Spectacle saw Starlight like that, she started bawling and crying her eyes out. She had never even expected this to happen. But Twilight said they will do as much they can do. After that, Starlight was at least warm enough. They decided to bring her to the hospital as fast as they could. So Twilight took her outside and teleported all the way to the castle, to the local hospital. Even it was a little bit distant, but it drained some of her energy, but it was the best option he had. The news about Starlight being found and where she'd been the whole night spread like a wildfire among the friends, and they all went to see her. Doctor said that there were a small chance that she may not even survive. After being exposed to the weather and the wind so much that a whole night, there were no guarantee that she would even make it. But they will try to do their best to keep her warm and make sure that they will make it. But when the doctor was asked how the big chance that she could make it, the doctor said less than 10%. I'm sorry. So that meant at least around 10% chance that she could survive. They waited by her side the whole day, but she never woke up. It took nearly 2 days for Starlight to finally waken up. But as she did, she was very dizzy. She don't even remember what happened, except that she was in this just left Fluttershy's cottage, and that's it. Except that she was walking and howling, made her scared, and almost a threat or something. Shimmering Spectacle was very happy to hear that she was awake, and she ran all the way to the hospital as fast as she could after she heard the news. It took Starlight at least a few days before she may have made a full recovery and was allowed to be discharged when she was about to leave the hospital. But the doctor told her to stay indoors for about a short more time just to make sure and stay away from cold too long. This was a very close call that she could have lost her life. And of course, it was only a matter of time before things started to be happening. Starlight was actually a lot tired, a lot more, but that was basically because that she had been exposed to this such cold winter for almost a whole night, which made a logical answer for that. But after in the spring, though, Starlight was still very tired, and she went back to the hospital to see for the reason. She was just has been tired because she had even been eating a lot. And after a while that she was made full recover and she was back to health again. That was a close call for both Starlight and Shimmering Spectacle to have lost the one they loved the most. But that same spring, Shimmering Spectacle made a very decision to ask Starlight if she wanted to marry her. And Starlight didn't hesitate to say yes immediately. They made the right choice because they really loved each other so much. And in fact, they didn't hesitate to even want to be apart. So they decided to have the wedding in Canada. Starlight had asked Twilight to be her bridesmaid, and Shimmering Speckle had asked Luna to be her bridesmaid, and that Celestia to be the one to put the ceremony. Even afterwards, after the party which Pinky had organized, Shimmering Speckle mentioned that she had a big surprise to Starlight. And she said that she had been asked Luna and Celestia to grant Starlight to have her full turn as an alicorn, but also would grant her immortality. Starlight was very stunned, but Shimmering Speckle understood maybe that she didn't want to be an alicorn. But Starlight said she accepted it. So she was turned into an alicorn at the same time, but she was happy because even though that Shimmering Speckle was said, I would have even had choice to be back as a unicorn, just only to be with you. Even if it meant I had to remove my immortality. I would have done anything to get my own immortality to give you a life the same, even back then in the hospital. That made Starlight smile and cry a little bit, but afterwards, they was just happy, especially now that Starlight had been granted as a full princess herself. Even at this time, even even Shimmering Speckle actually had embraced that she was now a royalty. Even at first, she didn't want to even be addressed as a royalty, but now she did. After the party, they actually went to Saudi Arabia for 2 whole weeks to celebrate the honeymoon. They had a great time there, and even in fact, Shimmering Sparkle could show Starlight a lot of places that she had been to during her sometime staying in Saudi Arabia in a distant past. They actually had an amazing time there. When they came back to Ponyville after 2 weeks, they were just happy to have entered a new chapter in their lives together, especially for Starlight. And in fact, also just after barely 3 years of being married, Starlight and Shimmering Sparkle they wanted to start a family of their own. So they had asked Twilight for help. And in fact, she was really grateful to have, and she was really willingly to help them. So Shimmering Sparkle and Starlight was granted the idea. Starlight decided to be pregnant first, and she actually had a daughter. And 3 years later, they even had another baby, which Shimmering Sparkle to be happy to have. She had a boy. The boy was born as an alicorn, like his older sister, also born as an alicorn. Both Shimmering Sparkle and Starlight, they actually had built their own small home just a little bit in the outskirts of Ponyville. Not a castle, but a smaller house, like a cottage that Fluttershy lived in. But I was just happy to be married with the one they loved the most. Even It could have meant that Shimmering Spectacle could have lost Starlight all those years ago. But now she was happy that she didn't, because she would have lost a lot more than that. But Starlight was just happy to have found her true love, and even to have this amazing family with her love, Shimmering Spectacle. Not only that, have an amazing family. And this is how Starlight and Shimmering Sparkle found a true love got found together. The end.